Today we're going to look at sentences and different sentence structures. So for sentences we have a simple sentence, a compound sentence and a complex sentence. This is an example of a simple sentence. John borrowed the phone from his brother. A compound sentence, which is two independent clauses added together. So John borrowed the phone from his brother and he never gave it back. Complex sentence would be, although John borrowed the phone from his brother, he never gave it back. So we're going to look at more detail of what makes a simple sentence and a compound sentence and a complex sentence. A simple sentence is also called an independent clause, which means it doesn't need anything else. It makes complete sense on its own. It's a complete thought. And a sentence, an independent clause, needs a subject and a verb. So for John borrowed the phone from his brother, we have the subject. Who are we talking about? What are we talking about? We're talking about John. What did he do? He borrowed. And then we have this additional detail here, the phone from his brother. So the subject-verb combination is essential to make a clause. So John runs, subject-verb, Sally cries, Tim sneezes, Madhavi laughs. Are sentences because they contain a subject and a verb. Again, simple sentences. Most gamers like to play in the evenings. Bill and Dylan play football every afternoon. Sophia goes to the library and studies every day. Examples of simple sentences, they express one complete thought and they all contain a subject and a verb. The subject here would be gamers. What do gamers do? They like to play games. Bill and Dylan play football every afternoon. Sophia goes to the library, studies every day. So we have this combination of subject, verb, single thought is a simple sentence. Here we have Bill and Dylan. That's called a compound subject. We have two subjects here, but they're just doing one activity together here, which is playing football every afternoon. So your subject can include more than one person or thing. A compound sentence contains two independent clauses joined by a coordinating conjunction. The coordinating conjunctions are as follows: for, and, nor, but, or, yet. So, and a helpful hint for remembering these coordinating conjunctions is the word fanboys. So for fanboys we have for, and, nor, but, or, yet. So also for, except for very short sentences, the coordinators are always preceded by a comma. So you should put a comma in before you use one of these words, unless the sentence is really, really short. She completed her homework. She also watched television. So two independent clauses. She completed her homework. Makes sense on its own. She, what did she do? The verb, completed her homework. She also watched television. Subject, verb again. So two independent clauses. If we're to make a compound sentence, we need to join these together by using one of these fanboys. So an example here would be, she completed her homework and she also watched television, and being the coordinating conjunction. And remember, just put the comma in there before that coordinating conjunction to make it punctually correct. Another example is, the hill is high, I will climb it. Two independent clauses. You wouldn't want to write like this, too short and choppy. You want to try to extend your sentences. So by making it into a compound sentence, again, we need one of these fanboys. The hill is high, but I will climb it. We can take photographs of the city. We can buy postcards. Two separate thoughts, both independent. Again, we can join that together by the use of a coordinating conjunction. This one is or. So we can take photographs of the city, or we can buy postcards. So to make a sentence, a compound sentence, you have to remember that you're including one of these words, fanboys. So for, and, nor, but, or, yet, so. When you're making a compound sentence, you're adding one of the coordinating conjunctions, which is one of these, for, and, nor, but, or, yet, so. And depending on which one you use, it will have the effect of slightly altering the meaning of the sentence. So if we go back to the sentence about the photographs in the city, two coordinating conjunctions being used here, which slightly alters the meaning of the sentence. The first one is we can take photographs of the city, or we can buy postcards. So the group of people here, the we, are given a choice. It's either one or the other. Take your photographs or buy the postcards. If you use the coordinating conjunction here, and, they can do both. We can take photographs of the city and we can buy postcards. So the meaning is altered depending on the coordinating conjunction used. If we put so in here, we can take photographs of the city. So is a little more unusual. So we can buy postcards. If I was reading that, by taking these photographs would somehow allow this group of people to buy postcards. So maybe they were going to sell the photographs to buy the postcards. So we've used three different coordinating conjunctions here, which has created three different meanings. Here we have another 4 examples of independent clauses that can be added, can be joined together using a connective, a coordinating conjunction, one of the fanboys. So there was a lull in the fighting. I ran like mad for cover. Jasmine worked hard on her essay. She got full marks for it. I want to go to the party. I haven't finished my homework. John found lifting weights hard work. He enjoyed it. So maybe pause the screen for a second and just try to work out which coordinating conjunctions you can add into these independent clauses to join them together. Okay, so we have there was a lull in the fighting. And now we have a consequence here. So I ran like mad for cover. Jasmine worked hard on her essay and she got full marks for it. I want to go to the party, but I haven't finished my homework. John found lifting weights hard work, yet he enjoyed it. So the meaning, again, is slightly altered depending on which coordinating conjunction you use, which connective. And it's up to you to decide which is the most appropriate for what you're trying to say in your writing. Now we're going to look at complex sentences. We've looked at simple sentences, compound sentences, and this is the final type of sentence. A complex sentence has an independent clause joined by one or more dependent clauses. A complex sentence always has a subordinating conjunction such as because, since, after, although, or when, or a relative pronoun such as that, who, or which. So let's look a little more carefully at this. So complex sentence is a simple sentence, an independent clause, plus a dependent clause. A dependent clause needs to start with a dependent word. So it needs to start with one of these here, or any of the other dependent words in the English language. When I got a credit card, I began spending too much money. So when is the subordinating conjunction. When I got a credit card is now the subordinate clause. I began spending too much money is an independent clause. It makes sense on its own. I began spending too much money, independent. When I got a credit card doesn't make any sense. It depends on the reader seeing this line to make sense of it. So when I got a credit card, I began spending too much money. When is the subordinating conjunction. This is the subordinate clause, and this is the independent clause here. A dependent clause needs to start with a dependent word. That doesn't mean the sentence needs to start with a dependent word. It means the dependent clause does. So an example here is, because I forgot the time, I missed the final exam. Because is a subordinating conjunction, which means this bit of information here now relies on this bit of information here to make sense. This is an independent clause. It doesn't need this. I missed the final exam. That's the important bit of the sentence. But now you're adding in detail with a complex sentence. Because I forgot the time, I missed the exam. So the reader gets to understand why this person missed the exam because of this subordinate clause. I cleaned my room before I invited Bob over for lunch. I cleaned my room is the important bit of the sentence. The additional bit, the subordinate clause, before I invited Bob over for lunch, is less important than this one. So there's your independent clause, there's your subordinate clause, and that's your subordinating conjunction there. The teacher returned the homework after she noticed the error. Again, you have your dependent word here, subordinating conjunction, and this is your dependent clause, after she noticed the error. The independent clause that makes sense on its own, the teacher returned the homework. This information here just gives extra information about when she gave the homework. When to use a comma. So when you start separating your sentences into clauses for complex sentences, you sometimes need to put in a comma to separate the clauses. So because I forgot the time, I missed the final exam. Remember, this bit here is independent and this bit here is dependent. So if your sentence begins with the dependent clause, the clause that needs the information in the later bit of the sentence, you put a comma. Because I forgot the time, comma, I missed the final examination. If you swapped this around, I missed the exam because I forgot the time, if the independent clause is first, you don't need a comma. I missed the exam because I forgot the time. The reader understands what you're trying to say straight away. I missed the exam. That's the important bit. So you don't need a comma here because I forgot the time. That will read smoothly and correctly without the comma. So remember, if you start with the independent clause, you don't use a comma. If you start with a dependent clause, you do use a comma. I cleaned my room before I invited Bob over for lunch. Cleaned my room is the independent clause. That's the important bit of the information. Doesn't need this bit of the information. This is additional information. I cleaned my room before I invited Bob over for lunch. So we don't need a comma here. Independent clause first means no comma later. Swap it round. Before I invited Bob over for lunch. We need more information. If I was to tell somebody before I invited Bob over for lunch and stop there, it wouldn't make any sense. So this is the dependent clause, and if that starts the sentence, we need to put the comma in there before the independent clause. I cleaned my room. Okay, there was a lull in the fighting. I ran like mad for cover. So we put these together previously in this video to make compound sentences. So we use the fanboys of so, and, but, or yet. And just to show that these independent clauses can be, again, combined, added together to make complex sentences, so not just compound sentences, by adding in the subordinating conjunction. So there was a lull in the fighting. I ran like mad for cover. Change that around. After there was a lull in the fighting, this is your dependent word, which means this is your dependent clause. So we need the comma here. I ran like mad for cover. This is now a complex sentence. The next one, when Jasmine worked hard on her essay, that doesn't make sense on its own. We've added the dependent word here. So we have the comma. She got full marks for it. The next one, I want to go to the party even though I haven't finished my homework. I want to go to the party is the independent clause. We start the sentence here first with the independent clause. That means we don't need a comma there. It just makes sense without it. Because John found lifting weights hard work, This is the dependent word. This is the dependent clause. We do need a comma there because it's starting the sentence. The independent clause here, he enjoyed it, is later in the sentence. Here are some examples of subordinating conjunctions or dependent words that can be used when you're creating complex sentences. So it might be worth pausing the video here and just taking a note of these and seeing if you can add them into sentences to make your own complex sentences. So this is what we've gone through today. Simple sentences, you should be able to answer what is a simple sentence. A compound sentence, how do you make compound sentences? What is a coordinating conjunction and what does fanboys mean? And then for complex, can you identify independent clauses and dependent clauses? Can you recognize a dependent word, also known as a subordinating conjunction? It's also important to remember in your extended writing tasks you should aim to use all of these sentence structures, so put in a variety of sentences into your work. And finally, this is not in this video, but we're going to be looking at the common mistakes people tend to make when they're constructing sentences, which is the comma splice and the run-on sentence, but that will be a separate video. Okay, thank you.